If you're feeling stressed in the workplace, please know you're not alone. It's normal. Look, the goal has never been to build a career with no stress. That doesn't even exist. The goal is to build the kind of profession that can carry stress without collapsing into it. That is the difference. And that difference is a competitive advantage. Because we've built the DO show specifically for people in sales or in business, leaders, and even entrepreneurs who want to think better, communicate better, and perform better, we're going to give you our 10 tips for managing stress in the workplace. There's a version of stress that everybody understands. The obvious kind, the kind where your calendar is packed, your inbox is full, your phone will not stop buzzing, and you can feel your jaw tighten before lunch. That kind of stress is easy to identify. But there's another kind of stress that hits even harder. It lasts longer, and honestly, it does more damage. It's the kind of stress that comes from responsibility. The kind that comes from knowing that if a deal falls apart, if a client walks, if a partner goes cold, if you miss hitting a number, that it's not just inconvenient, it costs something. It costs money, it costs momentum, it costs confidence, it even costs sleep. And if you work in sales long enough, you realize something important. Stress is not the exception. It is part of the price of admission. Not because the work is bad, not because success is toxic, not because pressure automatically means something is wrong, but because when your job depends on trust, timing, emotion, execution, human behavior, things are always going to go sideways. People change their minds, prospects will ghost you, partners will disappoint you, clients blame you for things that, you didn't cause. Markets will shift, your pricing is going to change, your internal team will drop the ball. Perfectly good opportunities somehow all of a sudden catch on fire. Y'all, that's sales, that's business. And one of the biggest differences between average professionals and top professionals is not that the top people avoid stress. It is that they understand how to interpret it, how to absorb it, how to respond to it without letting it own them. That is what we're going to be talking about today. Because if you're in sales, whether you sell mortgages, real estate, insurance, media, consulting, financial products, or anything else where people and performance collide, all of this is going to matter. We're going to talk about perspective. We're going to talk about expectation. We're going to talk about what to do when things go sideways. We're going to talk about why some of your best business relationships will be built in the middle of a mess, not when everything goes perfectly. And we're going to talk about how to keep the job from crawling into your head, into your soul, and creating your identity. I'm going to give you 10 steps or 10 tips that you can use to manage and deal with the stress like a true top producing professional. I'm Dustin Owen, and this is the DO Show. They don't teach this shit in school, but they should. I'm Dustin Owen, and for the past 20 years, the mortgage industry has been my classroom. I've helped over 2,000 families become homeowners, built a $1 billion mortgage operation from scratch, and earned my way into the top 1% of income earners worldwide. Along the way, I became a real estate investor, a business owner, and have invested in over 20 tech startups, even hitting a 20x return on one of my investments. This isn't theory, it's experience. Welcome to the DO Show, where I teach the lessons life taught me the hard way. The first thing you need to understand is that stress is often a signal, but it is not always the signal you think it is. A lot of people experience stress and immediately interpret it as proof that something is wrong. Wrong career, wrong company, wrong market, wrong season, wrong role. Sometimes that's true, but sometimes stress is really just a warning sign. But a lot of times, stress is not telling you that you are in the wrong place. It is telling you that you're carrying real responsibility in a profession where outcomes matter. That distinction matters because if you constantly treat stress as evidence that you should not be here, you will never build staying power. You will interpret every hard season as some kind of a misalignment. Every difficult conversation all of a sudden is a bad omen? Every blown up deal is your proof that you're not built for this? I don't think so. And how about when talented people talk themselves out of careers they could have easily mastered? If it was easy, y'all, let me tell you this, everyone would do it. And I know that sounds cliche until you sit with it long enough to realize it is actually useful. Because the reason skilled professionals are valuable is not that they shine when nothing goes wrong. It is that they know what to do when something goes wrong. If every client stayed calm, every deal stayed clean, every internal process worked smoothly, every partner was consistent, and every outcome was predictable, then the value gap between average and excellent would just collapse. You would not need to be needed if things didn't go sideways, if things weren't messy. That's what you get paid for. You get paid for when things go messy. So one of the first mindset shifts that matters in sales is this. Stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what part of this is simply the nature of the serious work that I do? That shift sounds small, but it changes your emotional posture. It turns stress from a personal attack into part of the terrain. And when you see it that way, you stop getting surprised by the existence of friction. You start preparing for it. The second thing that matters is perspective. This may be the most underrated stress management tool in the entire world because most people do not actually need less pressure. They need better perspective inside the pressure. One of the easiest ways to spiral in sales is to shrink your work down to the immediate problem. That one angry client, the missed contract date, the missed quota, the lost account, the canceled meeting, the partner who stopped sending you business, the deal that made you think you had the month saved when all of a sudden the month went to a disaster. When that becomes your whole field of vision, the stress becomes enormous. But perspective widens the frame. Perspective reminds you what you are really doing. If you sell a service, you are not just trying to get a signature. You're helping someone solve a problem. If you sell a financial product, you are not just moving paperwork. You're helping someone make a decision that impacts their financial well-being. If you sell something operational, strategic, or advisory, you're not just closing business, but you are reducing uncertainty for someone who needs clarity. That matters to you. That matters to them. When you remember the deeper value of the work, the pressure becomes easier to carry. Not because the problems disappear. That's never going to happen. Because they stop being the whole story. That is why get to is often healthier than have to. Look, you do not have to make the hard call. You get to make the hard call. You don't have to clean up the problem. You get to prove what kind of professional you are. You do not have to manage tension with a client. You get to demonstrate your composure and your honesty, especially when leadership really counts. That does not make it fun, but it does make it purposeful. And purpose is stabilizing. According to Gallup's 2025 workplace reporting, it states that engagement and well-being are deeply tied to how connected people feel to their work and whether they see meaning in it. When people feel disconnected, stress gets heavier. The third thing you need to understand is that some of the relationships that define your career will not be won when everything goes smoothly. And I'll tell you, very few are. They're actually won when things go wrong. This is one of the great paradoxes in sales. Everybody wants a clean transaction, the easy close, the happy call, the no drama relationship. And sure, those are nice. But smooth deals do not always reveal much. They do not reveal your composure. They do not reveal your honesty. And they sure as heck don't reveal your leadership. They do not reveal your ability to triage a problem and communicate under pressure. When something goes sideways, all of that becomes visible. And as strange as it may sound, that is where trust is built. That's where you earn your money. Not because people enjoy problems, because people remember how you handled those problems. Did you disappear? Did you get defensive? Did you start gaslighting everyone? Did you panic? Did you sugarcoat the situation? Or did you own the communication? Set the proper expectations, bring a game plan, stay steady, and fight for the outcome without disappearing. That's what is memorable. And in many industries, that is what creates repeat business. A client may forget the quote you gave them. They may forget the deck. They may forget the timeline, but they will remember whether you were solid when things got uncomfortable. Were you there for them? How did you react? Did you put your head in the sand or did you step up to the plate? That is why some of your best professional equity will be earned in the ugly moments. That deal that should have died, but did not because you kept everyone informed? Yeah, that's what they'll remember you for. The client who is furious but stayed because you told the truth and kept showing up, that's banked in their memory forever. The partner who trusted you before, but now you made a mess, but you didn't blink while you cleaned it up, you earned their trust. That is reputation building. The fourth thing is this. Your stress gets worse when you treat every problem like proof of your identity. This is where sales professionals get in trouble. You lose a deal and suddenly you're not just frustrated, you're feeling diminished. A prospect ghosts you and now it is just a lost opportunity. It feels personal. A client blames you unfairly and now it's not just a bad interaction. It feels like your competence is on trial. That is exhausting. And it happens because a lot of high performers do not just do the job. They become the job. They wire self-worth into outcomes. So when outcomes wobble, identity wobbles with them. That is not sustainable, y'all. You care deeply about the work. Good. You should. But if every result becomes a referendum on who you are, the job will eat you alive. You need separation, not indifference. The rough quarter is not your value. The ugly call is not your identity. The delay, the fallout, the conflict, the miss, the rejection, the blame, none of it gets you or defines you. This is one reason burnout gets normalized in performance cultures. According to Harvard Business Review, they have argued that burnout is often treated like an individual weakness when it is actually tied to workplace patterns, expectations, and the way people relate to work itself. Burnout does not disappear because someone tells you to be more resilient. It gets reduced when you change the relationship between demand, recovery, and your identity. That leads to the fifth point. Recovery is not a reward for having no stress. Recovery is part of the job. People in high performance roles often act like recovery is optional. Something you earn later, something you do once the chaos calms down, something you will get to do when things are finally more in control. That day never arrives. Or if it does, it lasts about 9 minutes before another problem shows up because, again, humans built business and humans are chaotic. So recovery has to become part of the operating model, not because you're fragile, because you want longevity. If your job involves tension, pressure, decision-making, rejection, urgency, and interpersonal complexity, then your body and mind need a way to come down from that load. That may mean a workout, a walk, some silence, a little prayer, writing, a hard cutoff time, no phone for a while, dinner without multitasking, anything that interrupts this pattern loop. Because if you never come down, your baseline changes. Irritability rises, clarity drops, patience thins out. You start snapping at the wrong people and spiraling about the wrong problems. Then you call it being driven, when really you're just cooked. The science on recovery supports this. HBR's work on stress recovery points to deliberate decompression, emotional regulation, and psychological detachment as important tools for reducing the amount of damage of work stress. The sixth thing is expectation management. A huge amount of stress in sales comes from the gap between what we expected and what reality actually delivered. Not always because reality was terrible, sometimes because our expectations were delusional. We expected every good prospect to convert. We expected every partner to stay loyal. We expected every internal team to move with urgency. We expected every close to, stay closed. We expected every month to validate how hard we worked. Guys, that's not what it really means to be a professional. That's emotional gambling. The more mature posture is this. Expect friction. Expect unpredictability. Expect that people will sometimes disappoint you. Expect that timing will sometimes work against you. Expect that some things you do well will still not produce the result you wanted. Not because the world is against you, because this is what working with people looks like. Strangely enough, realistic expectations reduce emotional wear, not by making you a pessimist, but by making you prepared. And preparedness is very calming. So here's the seventh thing. It's all about communication. When things go sideways, most stress gets multiplied by silence or being vague or even delaying. Bad communication does not just fail to solve the problem, but it amplifies it. Clients start imagining the worst. Partners fill in the blanks with blame. Internal teams create their own narrative. You lose trust way faster through poor communication than through many of the actual problems themselves. So when pressure is high, your communication needs to get simpler, not fancier. Here's what's happening. Here's what we know. Here's what we don't know yet. Here's what we're doing next. Here's when I'll update you again. That kind of communication right there, that's very stabilizing. It tells people you are present. It tells people you're not hiding. It tells people there is still leadership in the room. That alone relieves a shocking amount of stress, both for you as well as for them. And when you communicate clearly, you stop carrying that extra burden of imagined catastrophe. And here's the eighth point. Ownership is not the same as blame. This is where so many professionals get confused. Something can go wrong without it being your fault. But if a client is impacted, or your deal or your team or your process, there's still often a form of ownership available to you. You can own the communication. You can own the response. You can own the pace. You can own the plan. You can own the emotional steadiness. That's powerful. Because when people feel helpless, stress spikes. Ownership restores agency. And agency is what changes the nervous system. Instead of being trapped in the whole, this is happening to me, you move into, this is what I'm going to do with it. That shift is one of the healthiest stress responses a sales professional can build. The ninth point is simpler than people want it to be. You need a place to put the stress. Period. End of story. If your only system is thinking about everything harder, you do not have a system. You have another problem. So you need outlets, like a real outlet. Someone you can talk to who understands the weight of performance without turning every conversation into gossip. Think a coach or a mentor. Maybe it's a spouse if they can carry it without absorbing it. It could be journaling into your notebook. Maybe go on a run, take a drive. Some people pray, other people it's just a matter of having a good routine. Something that stops the stress from free floating all day, because unprocessed stress does not disappear. It leaks into your tone, into your sleep, into your patience, into your decisions, into the way you interpret neutral events like threats. And once that starts happening, you are no longer just dealing with stress. You are letting stress manage you. The 10th, and I promise you, the final idea is this. One of the most powerful ways to reduce stress is to get better. Not just because skill eliminates pressure, but because skill changes your relationship to pressure. When you have been through enough hard conversations, you are less rattled by the next one. When you know how to triage a problem, they still annoy you, but they do not undo you. When you understand your value, rejection stings less. When you have real process, uncertainty feels more manageable. When you have perspective, stress stops sounding like prophecy. When you have repetition, you stop treating every hard moment like a one-of-one crisis. This is why growth matters. This is why training matters. And honestly, this is why coaching matters. This is why exposure matters. Because the more capable you become, the less dramatic, ordinary business turbulence feels. Not easy, but ordinary. And that is one of the hidden gifts of experience. Not that problems disappear, that you finally stop acting like every problem means the house is on fire. So if you work in sales and stress has been riding you lately, here's the challenge. Do not just ask how to feel less. Ask how to think better. Ask where your expectations are creating unnecessary suffering. Ask whether you are carrying the problem or becoming the problem. Ask whether you have confused a bad moment with a bad identity. Ask whether you are communicating clearly enough, recovering seriously enough, and widening your perspective enough to handle the weight of serious work. When the pressure rises, how do you react? That's your question. So do this for me. If you like this type of content, make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. Make sure you share this episode with someone you know deep down needs it. Comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And trust that we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The DO Show.